this is Jesse Rogers, and this is the fourth video in our factoring series. Now this problem does have some common factors. So when we factor out any common factor as our first step, we notice that they do have something in common, right? They have the z, they have a variable of z in common. And they also have a factor of 7, right? They're all divisible by 7. So what we can do, as we talked about in our previous videos, is we can factor out what they have in common, which means dividing each of these by whatever it is that we're factoring out, and that's going to tell us what's going to be inside the parentheses. So when we divide by 7z, that's going to leave us just with a squared plus, and then that's going to give us 2a, and lastly is going to be 1. Now, we've talked about difference of squares, but this does not fit into that format. But it does fit into what's called a perfect square trinomial. So the idea with a perfect square trinomial is that it's going to be the first term and the second term. So a times a gives us a squared, and 1 times 1 gives us 1, right? And what makes this fit into the perfect square trinomial is that if you multiply these products, a times 1 is 1a, 1 times a is 1a, add those together and you get 2a. So as long as it fits into this format where the first term is a perfect square, the second term is twice the product of the first and last term, and the last term is a perfect square, then it fits into that format. And so because this is a plus, that means they have to be the same sign, which is always the case in a perfect square trinomial anyway. And the middle term tells us what that sign is. So because that middle term is a plus, that means they're all pluses here. So this is going to be 7z times 7z times a plus 1 squared. We can call it a plus 1 squared because there are 2 of them. So this is the format. As long as, again, this is a perfect square, as long as this first term is a perfect square and this last term is a perfect square, and when you multiply those together and then multiply that result by 2, which is the case here, as long as that's what the middle term is, then that fits into the format of a perfect square trinomial.